Check 1 2.
Check 1 2.
Perfect, ladies and gentlemen. Good evening or good afternoon or good morning, whenever you're watching this. And hello and welcome to this week's episode. My name's Matt Edwards. I'm sat here with the very beautiful, the lovely Julie Fox. Julie, thank you so much for joining me on this week's episode.
Welcome.
I've been really excited to have you on this show because, first of all, I'll explain to our viewers. So, Julie, I'm right in saying that your job role at the moment is you are a celebrant.
Yes, I'm a funeral and wedding celebrant.
Amazing. So you get both sides.
You see a lot of life in my job.
The happy and the sad. And I've always really been interested in celebrants and your kind of job because I guess mainly you perform for people who are non-religious, like if people want a non-religious wedding or a non-religious funeral. But I think what you give to that kind of a role is a real kind of comfort because you get to sit down and meet these families, whether they're getting married, whether it's a funeral, and you get to know them, the real person. And I think that's something that the world kind of misses right now. We're all talking about ourselves on Facebook and social media. So I'm really interested to find out what your job kind of entails. So first of all, thank you, Julie. You're amazing for coming here.
Oh, thank you.
So let's start from the beginning, right? Because I know you haven't been a celebrant forever, and I've had a chat with you before, so I know that you've had some crazy jobs, right?
Yeah, okay.
So
it's been an interesting path, yes, to get where I am.
I have no idea how the jobs that you've had in your past has led to this point, and that's kind of what I want to get to. So you have been, was it an investment banker? You worked for a bank?
I worked for a bank, a big global bank. I wasn't a banker. I was never a banker myself. I ran one of their communications teams.
Oh, very posh.
Which was posh, but I never actually understood banking. I was there more than a decade,
really?
And they never found out. I never knew anything about banking.
You're lucky you got away with that then.
Yeah, they just kept promoting me, but I've no idea why.
Brilliant. And you say you worked there for a decade?
More than a decade, yeah.
Wow.
A long time.
So you must have been quite good at it. Come on.
It's the communication side, so it's got a big part to do with what I do now. Lots of writing and editing and interviewing people. But if you ask me what asset-backed securitisations are, I still couldn't tell you.
No idea.
And I asked a lot of people.
So how did you get into being a communications banker?
I did not intend to work in banking. I was not suited to banking in any way. I started off working as a holiday park entertainer.
Wow. Right, okay.
So singing and dancing. And
you can sing?
Looking after children. I'm not going to do it now.
All right, no, don't worry.
I do. I have to sing hymns in my services now, so that's coming useful.
That's going to surprise you with the karaoke screen. But
now you're talking. If it's karaoke, I'm in.
We've got drinks in here. It's gin. Really, it's not water. All right, so you're an entertainer.
Originally, when I was 18, so quite a long time ago.
That can't be that long ago, Julie.
Many decades. So I did that for 4 summer seasons, and it's all I'd ever wanted to do after watching Heidi High and that kind of thing. It was my dream job. But I did 4 summer seasons, and then I felt I was a bit too old to carry on doing that at the age of about 21.
Oh, really?
The oldest person still doing it. It's a young person's job. It's long hours.
Yeah, they are long hours.
I thought it would be like being on holiday all the time, but it's not quite like.
There's a lot of organising to do at holiday parks, man. They have a really tough job, and but do you know what? But again, like it's very similar to your job in the respect that you get to make people feel really special.
Yes.
For the day, you know, people save a lot of money to go on holiday.
Yeah.
And you're like their first port of call. You know, they want to see you having fun, and they want to have fun with you. And
it's a little taste of celebrity because people go around with autograph books, and they knock on your door on your one day off to get a photo before they go. It's all before the days of X Factor and Pop Idol, so it was the closest thing you could get to being a celebrity then without being a natural one.
Yeah, of course. So I used to do entertaining like many years ago, and that was kind of like a real healthy start for my career because I'm a magician, as you know, and learning to make people feel special. The one thing I always remember, the best lesson I ever learned from being an entertainer was how important it is to remember somebody's name. You know, like when you're sat there and when John walks in from last night, you go, right, John walks in, he goes, oh, he remembers my name. Makes him feel really special. Right. It makes you feel good, doesn't it?
Yes.
It's an amazing thing. Did you miss it when you left being an entertainer?
Do you know, it's funny you should say that because I think I'd be a lot better at it now with some life experience. I was very, very young and took everything for granted. And I think now what a wonderful job that is to be with people when they're on holiday.
Yeah, right.
But I was quite keen to get on with the next part of my life. I was going to university and doing a degree in public relations.
Wow. Okay.
So I wanted to do something with that, but didn't know what. So when I left university, I did temping for a while all over the place, different organisations in London. And my CV found its way onto the desk of a wonderful lady called Sue Solomons, and she was running the corporate affairs team at this big bank. And she saw my CV and she needed an assistant to work with her. And she phoned me up and she said, can you come and meet me for an interview? And I said, well, I don't want to work in a bank. And she said, no, come to Fenchurch Street, come and meet me, and we'll just have a chat about this job I've got. So I went and met with her, but I was very determined I was going to go into celebrity PR or beauty PR or film PR, something that I saw as more glamorous.
Yeah.
And I met with Sue and she sold the job to me. And at the end I said, no, banking isn't for me. And she said, right, I'm going to stop you there. Most graduates would be ripping off their right arm to do this job. I think you're making a big mistake. And I said, okay, give me some time to think about it. And by Monday, I'd had a chat with a few people. My trusty mum, who's a great advisor.
Yeah, best person to get advice from is your mum. Always.
She said, give it 3 months, and if you hate it, you're no worse off than when you were temping. And the salary was a lot better than temping. Why else go into banking?
Yeah, right. It's where the money lives.
So I went to work with Sue, and we had a lovely time. And in my first week, she said to me, I'm going to be leaving this job in a year. I want to train you up to take over from me. I just started. That was terrifying.
Wow, yeah, right.
But that is exactly what she did. She trained me very well, and she did leave to go on to Pastures New. And I became the youngest person to join the bank's management committee in Europe. Again, still knowing nothing about banking, which was a bit terrible.
Sorry to cut you off. What did Sue do when she left? She didn't become an entertainer, did she? She kind of swapped job roles. She went to work for Haven.
She went to be a life coach, I think.
Did she?
Yeah.
Oh, great! No way.
Yeah,
wow.
Great lady. So I joined this management committee, but it was mainly full of public school boys that had grown up to to be in a different world than I was used to. And here I was, this girl from Romford, on their committee, saying random things. And I must admit, at that time, I was very much like Marmite. Some of them would say, she doesn't belong here, this isn't her world. And some were really on my side and thought I was a breath of fresh air and something completely new. Yeah. And that was a good opportunity for me to be promoted so young and to start doing that. And as I said, I kept getting promoted, so I kept thinking, I'm going to leave banking. I'm not a banker. I don't understand banking. Had this real imposter syndrome. I shouldn't be here. But it did keep working out for me, and eventually I was running their global internal communications team.
Wow, man, you climbed that ladder quick,
huh? I did, and they were still paying very well, and so therefore I didn't leave. I stayed for more than a decade, and I had some brilliant experiences. I worked all over the world, travelling all the time, looking after the New York office for a little while, working with some celebrities.
Oh, really?
I showed the former Prime Minister, John Major, around our offices, and it was my mum's greatest day. She printed it out in A4, this picture of me shaking hands, and put it up in her office. And she absolutely loves that. So it was an opportunity to do things. It was before the banking crisis when I first joined, so in 2008, and budgets were big, so we could organise fabulous events where we could spend thousands on a confetti cannon to go off in time to Mariah Carey's All I Want for Christmas Is You, just random things where there was money for everything. When I went to the New York office, my boss flew me back for a meeting and sent me back the same day. That's how it worked in those days.
That must have been a tiring day, though, to be fair.
That was a pretty
jet lag is very real, isn't it?
It was Thanksgiving as well, and I went back into the office, and I was the only one there. I thought, why have I flown back on?
Thanks, guys. Yeah, wow.
Set me right up here.
So I can't believe you stayed there for that long, because to be in a job that you keep constantly thinking, I don't know if I want this, I don't want this, like that can be hard on your mental health, really.
Well, I think that it happens to a lot of people. You get trapped with the mortgage and the lifestyle in one way, and you just find yourself just grinding out another day. And as much as there was the glamour and the celebrities and the events, 80% is being in a grey box, day in, day out, sitting around that boardroom table, day in, day out. And I felt that my soul was being sold to the devil.
Yeah, I bet.
In those days, we had blackberries. Do you remember blackberries?
Yeah, I do. Yeah. And the fruit, yeah?
No.
No, yeah, the phone. I remember, yeah.
Before the iPhone. And it had a little flashing light on the top. And if you had no messages, it was green. And if you had a message, it was red. And I'd put it on the table in the evening, and it would just be red.
No.
And there was no escape from it. There could be calls at midnight. I had to be in at 5 a.m. lots of the time.
Oh, man.
Because it was a global business, so things were happening all over the world.
Yeah, of course.
So eventually, once I'd had my 2 children, I thought, this isn't a life I can sustain.
Absolutely.
Now I've got little ones.
So was it having your children that made you go, look, I need a change in my life. I want to spend more time with them.
Yeah, definitely. It just wasn't conducive. You couldn't leave that office at 5 o'clock. No one. People would say, "Oh, on a half day, what's going on?" If you tried to leave. And my daughter, who was only tiny, 14 months when I went back, she'd be going to bed at 7. So then I wouldn't see her. And
of course.
That's not why I had her. So I knew that the days were numbered, and came up with a plan to escape.
So did you have to do the new Sue and train up the next person?
Yeah.
Say, I'm planning to leave next year and I'm going to train you up to do this job. Is that what it was like?
A little bit like that. In fact, when I did my first maternity leave, I brought my best friend, Keith, in. He had a degree in communication. And I brought him in and trained him because I knew he would have a similar way of operating to me. And he carried on working in communication. So,
Brilliant.
bringing in someone else to train them up was the same sort of thing I did.
Wow, thanks, Keith, because we need her in this job. So when you left banking then, and good old Keith took over.
He did, yeah.
And you're finally at home with your. Are they both daughters? You've got
no,
2 girls?
I've got
a daughter and a son.
A 9-year-old called Alicia, a temperamental princess, and a chilled out dude called Blake, who's 7.
A chilled out dude, brilliant.
7, yeah.
Love him.
Polar opposites they are.
Really? And so when you finally got to spend time with them, what was the moment when you decided that being a celebrant was for you? How do you even get into the idea of that kind of a job?
Well, growing up, I'd only ever been to funerals that had a vicar, as most people did years and years ago.
Of course, yeah.
And they were very dour and incredibly serious. Not as a child, I remember just thinking, what on earth is this? I don't recognise my granddad or who they're talking about.
Yeah.
But I then went to a funeral in my 20s for my great uncle, and it was taken by a celebrant, and I thought it was absolutely marvellous. No one knew anything about him. He didn't have a wife or children. He lived a very simple life, but she'd managed to find out so much about him. We were all amazed at what she did. So I gave her a call, and this is before I left London. I gave her a call and asked her if I could go and shadow her. Just for a few weeks, just to see what she was doing. And she did. She took me to meet some families and the services that she was writing. And she gave me a really good start. That was a really generous thing for her to do. I did assure her I wasn't going to set up in her area and poach her business, but she was really kind. So that was a few years before I left banking. But once I came to Devon, so I missed that bit out, which was where
It's a long way to come.
So after I left my job, when my son was born, I decided I was going to leave Essex, London as well. And I just stuck a pin in the map and decided on Devon.
Did you?
Well, I'd done
Good for you.
I'd done one summer season in Woolacombe, and I thought, what a beautiful place that would be to bring up children.
Yeah.
So we settled on the Exeter area because it's nearer to transport links and things. But yeah, we started a new life in Devon where we thought it'd be a nice place to bring up the children.
Wow.
And then once they were old enough to both be in nursery, I decided I was going to train properly as a celebrant. So I found the training organisation, Green Fuse, that worked from Totnes in Devon.
Okay, yeah.
It took me about a year to get fully qualified, and that was really intense. It was right back to degree level to get this diploma in funeral celebrancy.
Okay.
It was essays and practical work, learning about Victorian funerals. It's the whole shebang.
Wow, you have to go through the history of it.
They do it really, really carefully. And I think that that's the right way. Because anyone could set up and just start doing it, but you wouldn't understand the flow of a ceremony and how you need to take people through that journey to saying goodbye. So it was a really valuable experience.
What a beautiful thing to say.
Yeah.
To take people through a journey to say goodbye.
That's what we do, yeah.
That's really amazing. I guess in a way, I guess it's, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, it sounds like writing a movie script of somebody's life.
Well, yes,
the ups and the downs and the real parts that you have to, to become emotionally attached to that story to then, I don't want to say happy ending, but I guess the definition of a celebrant is to celebrate
someone's life. Yeah, that's right. When I go and meet with a family, I tell them to tell me everything, the good and the bad, and we'll figure it all out and tell the life story from there. And I get to hear stories that are better than EastEnders, and I'm so nosy. It's the perfect job for me.
And what a beautiful thing for the person who's going through, especially if it's a funeral. Just talking about funerals at the moment, they're already experiencing so much pain, but I guess they get some kind of relief from the moment they meet you, because they're reminiscing about all these good times and all the bad times, and they're kind of, I guess it's almost like therapy.
Well, people will say that they were absolutely dreading meeting me.
I can imagine.
People don't sleep the night before, and then I turn up and they're expecting Morticia Adams to turn up, full of gloom, and then
slide in.
And there I am with a big smile. And I say to them, there is absolutely no judgment in what happens in this meeting. If you want to cry, if you want to laugh, if you want to smash up the plates, you do whatever you need to do to get through the next couple of hours whilst we talk about your loved one. And people are remarkably open. So they expect they're going to be closed. And often they'll say, well, I'm not really going to tell you very much. He was a very private person. We don't really want to talk. And then bit by bit, by asking the right questions, suddenly that story unravels. And you can ask someone in their 90s questions that they haven't been asked for 50, 60, 70 years. Like, what was the first thing you thought when you met your husband? What was the first thing he said to you? And they look at you in amazement, and their children don't know the answers to these questions. And as a whole family, they can go through that journey of that person's life. And afterwards, there's nothing better than when someone says, I feel 100 times better having done that. They feel like a weight is lifted from their shoulders. And the reason for that is because someone else has been a witness to their loved one's life. It can feel very much like they've lost them, but no one else really cares. Yeah. But by sitting there and listening and asking all of the right questions, they feel someone else cares about them. And when I go and see a family, I treat them as how I would want my own family to be treated. You have to be 100% genuine, and you have to be 100% mindful. So when I'm there, I am never thinking about what I'm having for dinner or when my son's harvest festival is. You are with them, and you are trying to learn everything to do with that person and that family. And I think that comes across, and people really appreciate that, I think.
Julie, you're such a hero.
No,
I mean
I'm not a hero.
I absolutely mean that. Like, listening to the way you explain it about, I can absolutely imagine how people finally have that relief of saying, yeah, finally other people have been witness to my husband, my sister, my brother, their life, and that's a really beautiful moment. How long do you sit with them? Because, like you said, sometimes funerals, especially if they're religious, for some people can be a bit stuffy, especially if you've got a very strict vicar, and sometimes if the person who's passed isn't religious, when the person stood up there talking, sometimes you sit there and you think he knows nothing about him. Yeah. This isn't what he was like, and so you must have to spend quite some time with these people to really get to know that person.
It's usually minimum of an hour. It's gone up as long as 3.5 hours. So you never know how long you're going to be with a family. And if someone's lived till 98 or 100, it's going to take a lot longer than if they'd lived for a much shorter period of time, because they're going to tell you about what happened in the war and where they were evacuated to, right the way through to present day. And it's fascinating, and
Yeah.
I find myself so immersed in the stories that I don't want it to end. I want to hear all about the way they met their wife and what they did next and where they set up home. So,
of course,
yeah.
and you must. I mean, let's be honest. You must hear some crazy stories. You must hear some weird stuff, Julie. I bet.
There are skeletons in most people's closets.
We've all got them.
And that's
Not me. I haven't got any skeletons, I promise.
Maybe tell me later.
Yeah, of course I will. Of course I will. You seem like a good person to talk to. So what? So okay. So you've met the person. You've learned all about their life, and now you've put this, their family a little bit more at ease, and they feel like maybe now they're ready to get the funeral up and running and organise it and get ready, and then it's your turn. Julie takes the stage, and you tell a story that you've written, I guess, about this person's life. Does it ever go to plan?
Oh, it always goes to plan. I take away everything that I've written, pages and pages of materials, and then I go home and I sit with the MacBook and I just write until it's done. And I know approximately how much time we're going to have. It's normally about 30 minutes would be the length of a service. So I know how much I can fit in. That's difficult to try to trim things down.
Somebody's life in 30 minutes.
Into 30 minutes. But I always say to a family, we are not going to capture their whole life. That's impossible. We're going to capture the essence of them. And that's the only thing we're going to do. We want to avoid exactly what you said, people sitting there and saying, that wasn't Bill. None of that was Bill. So, when I sit down and write the service, that's always front of mind. How do I really get them across, capture the spirit of them so everyone there recognises them? And my style is very much to inject a little bit of humour. Now, it's the saddest time of people's lives in most cases, but we don't live our lives with our heads down. Most people are smiling and laughing, and the stories I hear are full of comedy and funny moments. And when you can induce a laugh during a funeral, you can almost feel the sigh of relief. As soon as people laugh, they think, okay, this is going to be all right. This isn't a highly religious service.
Yeah.
Same as throwing in the odd swear word. If the family have asked you to, if you do that, people immediately think, oh, this is something a bit different. You wouldn't get a vicar saying that. Right. So,
do you ever come on and go, John was a grumpy old git?
Frequently. It's normally a stubborn old bugger. That's what people say to me. It's in quotes. And they get to see the service before I deliver it. I send it to the family, first word to the last word. So and I tell them if there's a single word that makes them uncomfortable, or they say, no, that wasn't John, we just take it out. No questions asked, because they get one chance to get it right. They don't want a date to be wrong or a spelling to be wrong. They want it to be perfect, and I want them to know that I've got the skin of a rhino when it comes to making the changes. They can do whatever they want. It's their service.
Wow.
But it's not just about the words. It's all about the music, and we have performances. I've even had a stand-up comedian perform at a funeral before.
Really?
Yeah.
That's a great idea.
Yeah. You're getting some ideas now.
Yeah, I am. Yeah.
New gig for you.
This is my calling.
Help yourself out.
Yeah, absolutely. Have you ever performed at a funeral?
No, we have hymns. Now you're asking me. I've just had a remember. I got a phone call one evening from a funeral director that I work with a lot, and he said, the family have got a request. They've decided that they would like to sing and dance to Stevie Wonder, Happy Birthday, because it was their loved one's birthday on the day of the funeral.
Oh, wow.
Now, this guy had died in a local prison, and it was going to be broadcast live to the prison for his friends to watch. It's not unusual to webcast a funeral. It happens all the time, but this was going straight to the funeral, straight to the prison, sorry. And the funeral director asked me this, and I said, look, I don't think people are going to do it when it comes down to it. People have great ideas sometimes about funerals, but when you're sitting there saying goodbye, it might not feel as funny as what it does when you're talking with your friends. And he said, no, the mum wants this to happen, so we're going to do it. So I spent that whole evening learning all the words to Happy Birthday.
Happy birthday to you. Yeah.
and we get to the point of the service, and I make the announcement, and this is what the family would like us all to stand up and sing and dance to Happy Birthday, and the music kicks in. And I start clapping away like the former red coat that I am, as you would, giving it some. And I look around, and there's only one other person who's actually stood up, and that's the guy's stepdad. So there's just me and the stepdad dancing for about 3.5 minutes, fully aware it's being broadcast live to this prison, and they must have been wetting themselves laughing at this idiot at the front.
Who is this woman?
What is she doing at our friend's funeral? Who asked her to do this?
Did you do it though? Did you fully
I
commit?
did it
3
all
minutes
the way,
all the way
yeah,
through?
you've got
Well
to commit.
done.
Once you start, you've got to commit. Yeah.
Well done. Oh my goodness.
Style it out, always the way.
Yeah, right. Well done, mate. I don't know what I would have done in that situation. Oh my goodness. Has anything ever gone wrong?
Generally, funerals are run quite precisely.
I was going to say they're quite uniform in the way they work. Normally, you know, they're very strict with orders and things. So.
Yes, it's normally okay. But I did have one that did end in a fist fight.
You're joking.
It wasn't caused by me. Well, maybe it was.
A proper fist fight.
Pretty much.
No.
What had happened was there was this gentleman, and he'd had 2 chapters of his life. One where he was very well-to-do, and he had a very well-to-do family. And then in the second half of his life, he'd gone off the rails a little bit and turned to drugs and alcohol, and he'd made a whole new group of friends. But it was his mum that I was meeting with, and she asked me to say, now, we all know that Heather was the love of Dave's life. Changing the names.
Might get me. I was going to say. Right.
So we all know that Heather was the true love of Dave's life. And this other lady from the other group of friends stands up and says, I won't swear now, but no, he wasn't. No, she wasn't. I was the love of his life. And then someone else stood up and said, sit down, shut up, have some respect. And then other people were joining in. And then 2 of them, the original lady and someone who told her to shut up, started going at it in the middle of the aisle. The funeral director was a former policeman, which was ideal for that situation. Goodness. So he managed to bundle them out and shut the door, which left me wondering what I was going to say next. But
Happy birthday to you.
Keep that in reserve.
Wow.
But what I did say is, well, no one can say that Dave's funeral wasn't as colourful as his life. And that got a big laugh.
Great.
And everyone settled down and we carried on. But what they didn't know was out of the window, which is at the side of the chapel, I could see the funeral director had one of them in a headlock and the other one was kicking at the other one. And I had to not acknowledge any of this whilst I'm carrying on with the rest of the funeral. So,
oh my God. Yeah. That is the best story I think I've ever heard.
It doesn't happen very often.
Wow, that is amazing. Okay, what is the strangest request you think you've ever had? Have you ever been asked to do like a funeral for a pet?
No.
Like for an animal?
No, I would easily do a pet funeral. In fact, I wrote some words when a bird flew into the window at home and it upset the children and my partner's children. So I wrote a little committal for the bird whilst my partner buried it in the garden.
Oh, that's really sweet.
So yeah, no, pet funerals. I'm trying to think of the strangest request. Funerals now are very different than they used to be. So people have had the curtains closed to the Doctor Who music.
Great.
People have the theme from the snooker. They have Bat Out of Hell from Meatloaf.
Yeah.
We're not confined to all things bright and beautiful.
Great.
Anymore.
That's amazing.
Someone's chosen their own music for a service I've got coming up, and they wanted Celebration by Kool and the Gang, and it's amazing. People have had. So I say I've had the stand-up comedian. I've had wonderful singers, better than anything I've heard on TV, come and sing a cappella in the chapel, and talented musicians take the stage as well as part of the service. So yeah, it's no day is ever the same, and no day is ever boring.
Yeah, I can imagine. Julie, I can't say this enough. I know I called you a hero, but you know, I've had not too many deaths in my family, but I've had a few friends that have passed away, and a couple of them had priests, and a couple of them had celebrants. And the first time I saw a celebrant, I kind of, the relief I felt, because everyone dreads a funeral. It's a really awful moment, and I genuinely believe that what you give to these families is priceless and invaluable, and I think you're an absolutely beautiful person for doing it, and you seem really selfless and lovely, and so I think the world should really appreciate you. It just goes to show, when you sit down and you speak to somebody and you find out about their lives, people always have a really interesting story to tell, and the fact that you let them tell that story, I think, is so beautiful. So thank you very much, Julie.
You're most welcome.
And I really appreciate you for coming on.
It's normally me asking the questions.
I know, right?
This is really weird for me.
Is it strange? Is it strange? You're doing ever so well. 10 out of 10, some funny bits. Excellent. Thanks, Julie. So there we have it, the beautiful, the amazing celebrant, which is the incredible Julie Fox. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us this week on Check 1 2. Make sure you like, share and subscribe, and click that bell notification button so you know when the next video is coming out. In the meanwhile, whatever you're doing, have an amazing day. I love you. My name is Matt Edwards. Meow. Thank you, Julie.